What's strange for rich people, but normal for poor people? Lack of choice. If you're poor, it's no longer a question of will I go out tonight? You won't because you don't have the money. Shall I buy a takeaway? Nope. You'll eat what you have at home or go hungry. When you're poor, your life is emptied of many choices because you simply don't have the money to buy yourself options in your life. Eating whatever you can afford, not whatever you want. Grew up with a friend from school that just led a totally different lifestyle than my family. They were super rich. Dinner at their house every night was like Christmas Eve dinner or a really special occasion in my family. How much was being spent wasn't even on the radar. It was just, what does everyone want? If they didn't feel like cooking, they would just take us out for a casual dinner at a restaurant I didn't even know existed in our town. It was just a noticeable difference from my family, where we'd try to make a dinner stretch for 2 or even 3 days before making something else. Then if we did well in school and were behaving well, we'd get to go out for pizza on Friday. Having a small house and siblings sharing a room. I went to school with a girl whose family was super rich, and she heard me talking about how my sister and I always shared a room, and it blew her mind. She asked me if we also had to share a bed. We didn't. Then proceeded to tell me how her house was so big that they used an intercom system and had a laundry chute. She had siblings too, but she just couldn't grasp the concept of sharing bedrooms. My father used to tell me about how growing up, there were 3 bedrooms in the house. The master bedroom, a room for the boys, and a room for the girls. He had several brothers but only one sister. When she got married and left, the eldest brother got his own room. It always made me feel like crap for having my own room. Counting the money in your wallet before going into the supermarket, and mentally adding up how much you're spending as you shop. I round up to make sure I have enough money. Here in the UK, some supermarkets have the ability to scan as you go. It means you always have an exact total of your current expenditure and can just rapidly pay and leave at the end. Losing sleep over money. It's a weird thing, not a nightmare, just an uneasy state which wakes you up in the middle of the night. I had that really badly in my second degree. I was so badly in debt, and despite working 2 jobs, I was barely staying afloat. I kept telling myself after my second degree was done it'd be better. It did get better, but waking up due to financial stress sucks. Yep, it does. And it's not like you can afford to talk to a financial advisor or therapist to sort things out, and all your friends are broke too, so they don't want to hear about it. I don't miss those days and I hope I never see them again. Constantly knowing exactly how fragile your quality of life can be. Any financial emergency can totally rat-frick the delicate balancing act you've managed so far. Like having to learn to medically tend your own wounds as a kid because you can't afford the medical bill. That is, supergluing your skin together instead of stitches. Having to walk everywhere because you can't afford driving lessons. Never mind a car. Also being unable to get in public transit or get taxis Ubers due to low funds. Imaging having to choose between groceries or being late to somewhere due to low money. Dude, this was me for so long until I got enough money for a nice bike. I'd bike everywhere for a long time, and I only just bought my first car. Leftovers. Looking at the price of gas before stopping to pump. Shopping at several stores to get the best prices on everything possible. Sewing a hole in pants or shirts. Deciding what you can't do if you go out to eat. Getting vacation from work and not going anywhere on it. I consider leftovers being for lazy people. Being a lazy person, I purposely cook large amounts so that my next couple of meals only require reheating instead of actual cooking. Knowing you have to keep up a cash flow or your life will be ruined. Although there are rich people who do it too, most well-off people do not know the anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck. Even the wealthier people who do it can get away with it for much longer in a large house versus a minimum wage worker in a 1-bedroom apartment. I heard of a family in Chicago area that stayed in a $1.5 million house for 8 months before being evicted without paying a single statement. Imagine a unit renter being able to have an 8 months grace period on their first rent payment. It's daunting to take on life and know that any mistake could result in you not having a place to lay your head. And even more so nowadays. I see children who have gotten the green light from their parents that their financials will be handled for the rest of their life and they kinda just do what they want to do now. It honestly makes me angry for some reason. Well, eviction in Chicago is really hard, so they probably could get away with it there. I have a friend who does property management and he has some horror stories. Working 6 or 7 day weeks for years at a time. Never taking a vacation. Not pursuing your dreams interests because doing what you have to do to pay the bills takes every ounce of energy out of you. To add to this, not going to a gym for physical exercise. Most poor people do manual labor and work 6-7 days a week. Getting up early in the morning to catch a bus, train, or even walking to work that they are physically exhausted when they get home. Then they have to cook, clean, take care of kids. Because they generally don't work behind a desk, physical activity is part of their daily routine. The look on your friends' faces when you have to say again that you can't afford to go on that trip, camping, heck, even certain restaurants. Reading the menu from right to left. We didn't have money growing up, so on the rare occasions we ate somewhere with a menu I'd have to start by looking at the price and figuring out the cheapest option. I would also order after my sister because she wasn't as diligent with ordering the cheapest option, so if she got something pricey I would just ask my mom if we could split something, knowing it was already a stretch to be out for a meal. Also, I remember one time my sister begged to an appetizer, and she got a guacamole, which seemed like an insane splurge on her part. I ended up getting in a fight with her, kicking her hard. As an adult I am now upper middle class and just order whatever I want. When I take my mom out to eat I can still see her eyes scanning the prices first, and I have to let her know I'm ordering for her and I get her something she would never order for herself. She deserves it. I never ordered an appetizer in a restaurant until I was in my 20s and someone just casually asked me if I wanted one. Forgot that section of the menu even existed. Opulence. Off-brand cereal as a kid. The kind that comes in the giant bags for $5. Bags of clothes passed around by parents that you got your new clothes from. Never taking vacation anywhere but my grandparents' house 2 hours away. We never had the money to take a week off and go to the Grand Canyon or Disneyland or something like that. I forget going out of the country ever. Family vacations like you see on TV where everyone gets packed up and goes to Florida or London. I always wondered how they always had the money to go places with the whole family like that. MLMs. When I was a kid, every mom I knew was into Amway or Tupperware or some other party job. That's what I called them. They'd throw the most boring parties in the world to try to sell projects. Growing up and not automatically having the option of taking chances. When you don't have a lot of money, things rich people do with their money, like investing it or using it for a startup business, are out of the question. You can't pay your gas bill with a share in the stock market. If you have money, you can do all sorts of things with it to gain more money, but if you don't have much to begin with, it's far too precious to put into risky ventures that might someday pay off. My girlfriend's family isn't as wealthy as my own. Not that we're elites or anything, but there are definite differences I notice. I think it comes down to time and money. My family will always spend money to save time, whereas they do the opposite. I think the wealthier you are, the more ignorant you are to the struggles of being poor. Like, being comfortably middle class means you don't really get why people make a big deal out of the price per pound of some chicken thighs or buying cheap clothes at Target. Being upper class, you don't understand why people even have to devote energy to shopping at all. Knowing exactly how much money is on your person and in your bank account at all times. I went through some rough financial patches and I always knew how much $ I had. Recently I nuked my Visa bill and have sat positive in my account for a number of months. I now know roughly how much I have instead of exactly how much I have. I don't think as hard about my purchases when I am standing in a store. The more financially secure you are, the less worry you have about your available funds. The streets of your neighborhood being covered in broken glass. Related to that being those plastic roses that come in long glass tubes. AKA how they legally sell crack pipes. Putting down a pet you love because you cannot afford the surgery treatments to keep them alive. Smiling through being talked down to and harassed because the other option is unemployment. Scrounging for change in order to pay the electricity bill that will otherwise be shut off tomorrow. I worked in high-end antiques for about 5 years. The clientele were the sort of person who would drop $735K on a duck decoy or $300K on a chest of drawers. I have absolutely nothing positive to say about these people. Nothing. But I have some very juicy rich people being awful stories if anyone's interested. I am very interested in hearing those, even if only to give you a place to vent. I like hearing those thug. Paying for gas with change, not quarters, pennies and nickels, and hoping it's enough to get to payday. Also choosing not to eat anything that day because it was pennies and nickels for gas or pennies and nickels for food, and you gotta get to work somehow. I am honestly shocked more of y'all don't steal. If I literally couldn't afford to eat, I would probably steal some food from stores. I would try to do it as little as possible, but I would do it. Also, if anyone in this thread literally cannot afford food, please comment here. Especially if you're in Alaska, I might be able to help you out. Not buying in bulk, living paycheck to paycheck, delaying seeing a doctor because it costs too much, even with insurance. My boyfriend, who's had a pretty nice life financially, doesn't know what fudge rounds are. He asked me what they were 2 days ago and my mind was blown. It made me realize I shouldn't wish I had more money, because if I did, I wouldn't know what fudge rounds are and my depression would probably be worse without my gooey, teeth-rotting treats. I think it's funny how poor people food always seems to taste the best. Little Debbie cakes were my childhood. My faves were the oatmeal creme pies and the brownies with walnuts. Cosmic brownies aren't the same. Kids sharing snacks at the movie theater. I used to work at a concession counter and I'd hear parents snap at their kids, no one's getting candy. You're all getting a popcorn and soda to share, because I always got my own candy at the movies growing up, and we weren't even rich, just middle class. But it took me a while to realize that for a lot of people, just going to the movies was an expensive treat, and now their kids are whining for candy that these parents can't afford. I realized that candy was the same price as popcorn, but much smaller portions. They can only afford a snack and drink for the group to pass around, and that will just have to do. Using coupons. Biggest culture shock when I started college was having to explain to a friend exactly what they were. We were all gifted coupon books on move-in day and she has no idea what they were or how to use them. When I explained, she was completely blown away. Deciding which bill doesn't get paid. Buying something you thought was on sale wasn't, and not wanting to make a scene and have people call you out for not having enough money, so you just have them take the item off your total. Ignoring phone calls because you never know which one's a debt collector. Turning the key and praying that the car starts, or you're going to be living on the street because paycheck to paycheck doesn't allow for a day off to fix the car, nor does it allow for repairs. You'll never fail like common people. You'll never watch your life slide out of you, and then dance and drink and screw, because there's nothing else to do. But they can rent a flat above a shop, cut their hair and get a job. It's just that they can call their dad and stop it all. Shatner's is the superior version. I'll never go to Sheffield again. Buying something cheap instead of what you want at a restaurant so you can still afford to tip. Maybe not a poor person but a broke person thing, lol. Me. Also no, I rarely eat out, but like the once a month I do with a friend. I wouldn't say my family is poor, so to speak. There are a lot of people worse off than us, but I also know most of my friends have it better off than us. I would say stress about money in general is pretty normal. I would always feel really bad if I asked for money to go see a movie or something, or if I wanted something new, simply because I knew my parents wouldn't have it, and I would think about what else this £10 could be used for. Recently we got news that we were receiving a good chunk of money. Not a lot, but it felt amazing and so odd to have this stress lifted off our shoulders. Even if it was only temporary, our whole house seemed to light up a little and we were able to replace some furniture that was falling apart, and Christmas is more or less taken care of. I love seeing my parents happier. Having a change jar in the bedroom. At the end of the day, when you are about ready to go to bed, you empty your pockets and place the coins in the change jar. When the change jar gets full, or you run short of cash, you take the jar to the bank, or CU, and exchange it for real money, that is, paper bills. If you've ever run out of food 3 days before payday and had to take your change jar in to pay for groceries, you know exactly how useful this is. If you are a rich person, this might not ever occur to you too. You probably put your groceries on a card, ATM, debit, Visa, and don't concern yourself with saving the coins. For rich people, the rough equivalent of that is cash back and rewards points on credit cards, but it doesn't have nearly the same significance as the coin jar. Having to decide between filling a prescription and paying the final notice on the power bill, and I'm in Canada where insulin and other diabetic maintenance drugs are relatively cheap compared to other countries. Counting the days until payday, checking your account balance, then dividing so you can figure out how much you can spend until the next check. It's budgeting but for poor people. Fast food. My parents are quite rich and I distinctly remember going to Pizza Hut with them once when I was visiting. They'd never been there before. Watching my dad ask for truffle oil and my mum ask for red wine was so cringe I thought my face was going to fall off. Empathy. Especially in people who were born rich, you see a lot of trouble even understanding the plight of those less fortunate. It's such a foreign concept. I came across this myself when I started dating my girlfriend. She grew up the kind of dirt poor you don't even hear about. Food banks, houses with collapsing roofs, sleeping in cars and on family couches because her parents had to travel town to town looking for work. Coming from a middle-class family where food was always in the fridge and we only got lightly scolded for leaving the lights on, it was a depressing shock to my system. I guess I always knew it existed, but it was never real for me till it impacted someone I care so much about. Telling your kids to take a second helping while you smile and assure them you aren't hungry and will eat later. At-home haircuts. I always felt intense guilt about not being able to offer anything to people asking for help on the street, especially when it is super hot or cold. A bottle of water or some warm tea is at least something. Feeling unworthy of any public assistance because someone else is worse off. Not being able to afford it to take off work for medical reasons. I'm a Marine vet and the VA clinic where I live wants me to drive hours away to get an MRI and new x-rays even though there's a hospital literally walking distance from the VA clinic. The VA pays X amount for gas or provide transportation for free, but I'd still have to take an entire day off work to get that stuff done even if it is free, so in the meantime I work 2 jobs and exacerbate underlying medical issues just hoping I can afford to take a day off work before I'm paralyzed. When you go to dinner with a group of friends and people start to order apps and drinks, poor people start to get nervous about how the bill will be split and if they'll be expected to split evenly even if they don't have any drinks. When you're more rich you tend not to worry about that stuff. Having a problem when you owe money. If you owe the bank 10,000 you have a problem. However, if you owe 1 million the bank has a problem. $1 million is a pretty low amount. You won't even get allocated your own personal banker for that amount. Waiting. Can't afford to skip many lines or take alternatives not available to the muck of the earth like myself. Cleaners, gardeners, assistants, lawyers. All these people save you time everywhere. It seems counterproductive to clean your own house when you can be doing something else that pays 50 times what you pay the cleaner to do it. I come from a fairly well-off family and I dated a girl who grew up in poverty. One thing that blew my mind was that she had absolutely no concept of how to save, make money work for you. Tax-free savings accounts, RRSPs, compound interest, stock cycles. It was all totally foreign to her. She just saved money in her bank account. All that stuff was part of how I grew up. Realizing that your fiance and yourself will probably never be able to afford the perfect wedding. So you have to decide to either save for an insanely long time or just settle for whatever you can throw together now. Also trying not to think about the honeymoon. It's the marriage that's important, not the wedding. Get married now and when things get better, have a party to celebrate and go on your honeymoon. The wedding is just one day, the marriage lasts a lifetime. Not having the benefit of the doubt. When you're rich, especially white and rich, and get into trouble, the default assumption is that you made one-time mistake, suffer from mental illness, addiction, etc., and you deserve mercy. Conversely, when you're poor, especially brown and poor, the default assumption is you're a godless heathen who needs to be taught a lesson. That lesson usually shakes out to a disproportionate prison sentence for the same, sometimes even lesser, crime. Of course, if you're already poor, going to prison all but assures that you'll remain poor for the rest of your life. Not only that, it means that in all likelihood your kids will grow up poor. and the cycle continues. Not filling the gas tank all the way up because you don't have enough money. Scraping for change for gas to get to work. Vacations. My ex was so confused on why I couldn't go to Japan with him for the summer. Mind you, we were both college students. My family is definitely not rich, we share a small apartment, and so, I had to explain to him that all my money went towards schooling and helping out family. Never thought there would be a day I would have to explain something like that. Taking leftovers from dinner or a party. I remember taking my girlfriend to her opera recital at a very prominent family's home. I was close friends with the singer. Quality woman. Her grandma was helping serve the food. Well, at the end of the night her grandma offered some leftover cake to her and of course she accepted. I started seeing the looks from other guests. No one else took any food. Lots of people were giving us the side eye. I could tell it wasn't socially acceptable with that crowd. It was an interesting experience. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.